Howdy, everybody. Dr. Andy Woods here, pastor, teacher here at Sugarland Bible Church. Want to welcome you to Pastor's Point of View, number 391. This is being released on January the 16th, 2026. We are barely into a new year. And just when you thought the prophetic scenario was going to slow down, there's been some monumental things happening since the beginning of the new year, which are not slowing down the prophetic scenario, but it seems to be speeding it up. And I want to bring you up to speed on those things. So with those thoughts in mind and all of that being said, I want to direct you to our preview slide, as here are the two issues that we're going to talk about in this particular session. The explosion of anti-Semitism, not just around the world, but right here in the late, great United States of America. And also there's been some key developments, particularly with Iran, relative to the Gog-Magog alignment. So with those thoughts in mind, let's jump into our first category here, anti-Semitism, which is the irrational hatred of the physical descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Why is anti-Semitism irrational? Because it ultimately comes from the devil. As Revelation chapter 12, as our graphic here makes us aware of, points out, that's the chapter, Revelation 12, where Satan, in the second 3.5 years of the tribulation period, is going after the woman who represents Israel there. She's clothed with the sun and the moon and the 12 stars, which connects exactly with Joseph's dream in Genesis 37, verses 9 and 10. But Satan goes after Israel, trying to gobble her up, trying to destroy her, because Satan knows that the kingdom is going to come to the world through Israel, something he wants to stop, because once the kingdom comes, he's no longer the illegitimate ruler over planet Earth. And so he's trying to destroy the instrument through which the kingdom will come. And that cosmic conflict, angelic conflict, reaches a zenith, an apex, in the second half of the tribulation period. And so that becomes one of the many chapters of the Bible we can point to, which shows you that not only is anti-Semitism produced by the fallen angelic world, but it won't subside as we get closer to the end of the age. In fact, it'll increase. In fact, the increase of anti-Semitism all around us shows us how late in the hour it is as far as our trajectory into the prophetic scenario is concerned. So with all of that being said, let's bring us up to speed on anti-Semitism here in the West. Notice this particular article from Breitbart. This is dated January the 1st, 2026. The title of it is Mamdani Takes an Oath on the Quran as he is sworn in as the New York City mayor. This is unprecedented. Notice what the article says. It says, Mamdani became mayor of New York City just after midnight Thursday, taking the oath of office as he placed his hand on the Islamic Quran in a private ceremony. In so doing, Mamdani, a Democrat, was confirmed as the first Muslim leader of America's biggest city. Quoting him, he says, "This is truly the honor and the privilege of a lifetime," the 34-year-old said in a brief speech, according to the AP. Listen to who his parents are. His parents are filmmaker Myra Nair, and his father's name is Mahmoud Mamdani, who happens to be a professor at Columbia University. And the article is saying his parents were in attendance. So this is not the child of poverty. This is the child of privilege. This is the child of radicalism, progressivism, liberalism. Columbia University is one of the most liberal campuses in the United States of America. And there is his own father as a professor at Columbia University. The article concludes as follows. AP further reports that the immigrant from Uganda will be sworn in again in a much grander style in a public ceremony at City Hall at 1 p.m. by United States Senator Bernie Sanders, one of the mayor's confessed political heroes. Now, we know who Bernie Sanders is. He ran for the presidency of the United States. He is a leftist, radical socialist. And not only is he the one that's going to swear Mamdani in, but Mamdani looks at Bernie Sanders as his political hero. So this is what we would call unprecedented. Not being sworn in on the Bible, but being sworn in on the Quran. I think it's happened a few other times, maybe with Keith Ellison and others. But this is a description of the ascendancy of Islam in the United States of America. Mamdani is not a socialist the way the article portrays him. He is a radical communist, Marxist, jihadist. And this is the one now who is the mayor of one of our most prosperous, popular, well-known cities, Ellis Island, the very first symbol of America that many times immigrants see, when they come to these shores. This is now the face of all of that. And so these are developments that are stunning. And they're significant prophetically because as Islam gains a foothold in the United States of America, you can expect an automatic persecution of the Saturday people, the Jews, and the Sunday people, the Christians. And you say, well, Andy, how do you know that? I know that because this is how it works with Islam everywhere it gains the upper hand. They always persecute Christians and Jews. And so this growth of Islam in the United States of America is largely the fulfillment of Bible prophecy of the increase of anti-Semitism as we get closer and closer to the end of the age. We're seeing this happen in real time in places in the world that maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago you would have never anticipated it could happen there. Notice this article from Red State. Notice this article dated January the 3rd, 2026. It says, seriously? Kathy Hochul orders One World Trade Center lit in honor of Muslim American Heritage Month. What is this article about? It says this: just hours after New York City's first Muslim American mayor, Zohran Mamdani, was sworn in, Empire State Governor Kathy Hochul declared January to be, quote, Muslim America Heritage Month, close quote, and ordered One World Trade Center and 15 other state landmarks to be bathed in green light to celebrate the heritage and culture of Muslim Americans. Many on social media were quick to point out that we can't illuminate the Twin Towers because they are no longer on the skyline after the horrific 9/11 Al-Qaeda terrorist attacks, which took down buildings and killed almost 3,000 innocents. September 11th, as all Americans know, was carried out by 19 hijackers affiliated with the Islamist extremist group led by the late Osama bin Laden. By the way, bin Laden also came from a wealthy home. A lot of people don't know that. A wealthy engineering family. So people think, boy, if we can just get rid of poverty and give people a life of privilege, this radicalism will stop. Nothing could be further from the truth, as some of the most affluent, well-educated people in our world are given over to the type of radicalism that we're now seeing taking ascendancy, taking a foothold in New York City. But 9/11 was evidently not on Hochul's mind Friday evening. The governor also released a statement vowing to protect Muslims from Islamophobia. She did not mention a report released Monday from the New York Police Department, which showed that the Jews were targeted more than all other minority groups combined in the Big Apple in 2024, and combined for more than 54% of all hate crimes in the city. Boy, New York, we've come a long way. Notice this screenshot from Good Friday, 1954 in New York. Notice that the buildings in that time were lit up with 3 crosses to commemorate the death of our Lord Jesus Christ and to look forward to his resurrection from the dead, Resurrection Sunday. This is when America had some kind of collective awareness of Christianity, something that's obviously gone in New York City, because now these very buildings are now being lit up to honor Islam. So New York has come a long way, not for the better, I might add, purging Christianity from all vestiges of public life since 1956 and not allowing the public square to stay neutral, because nature abhors a vacuum. But the public square then eventually becomes a platform, a pulpit, if you will, for Islam. It's not until you look at the past like this that you can see how far we have fallen, particularly in the Big Apple. I remember what Jesus said to the church at Ephesus in the book of Revelation, around Revelation chapter 2, verses 5 and 6, where he rebukes them for having left their first love. And he makes this statement. He says, remember the heights from which you have fallen and repent. So you can't repent unless you see how far you've fallen. And unless you see a picture like that, the 1956 picture, you have no real concept of how far New York has fallen, as now Kathy Hochul is lighting up these buildings to commemorate Islam. As this parade of horribles continues, notice what Mom Donnie did immediately, not down the road, immediately when taking power in New York City. This is a January 1st, 2026 article from the New York Post, and it says, a Jewish civil rights group demands answers from Mom Donnie after posts about combating anti-Semitism were scrubbed from the New York City's mayoral X account. The article says a Jewish civil rights group is demanding answers from freshly minted Mayor Mamdani after past posts about combating anti-Semitism were scrubbed from the Big Apple's mayoral X account, raising serious concerns. The Democrat socialist, the first Muslim to lead City Hall, has been accused of deleting 2 of Eric Adams-era posts highlighting the city's fight against anti-Semitism that were shared hours before Mamdani was sworn in and took control of the account Thursday, according to the National Jewish Advocacy Center. Quoting that group, it's difficult to overstate how disturbing it is that one of our very first acts, your very first acts as mayor of New York City on your very first day in office was to delete the official at NYC mayor tweets addressing the protection of Jewish New Yorkers, the organization said in a letter addressed to Mamdani. Quoting them again, at a moment of unprecedented anti-Semitic intimidation, violence, and exclusion in the city, the decision to erase official statements affirming the safety and protection of Jews is not merely tone deaf, it's shameful. It sends a message, whether intended or not, that Jewish New Yorkers are uniquely undeserving of continuity, clarity, or reassurance from their own government. So this is what Mamdani does as his first order of business. He deletes tweets from the former mayor, Eric Adams, that were supportive or protective of the Jewish people. I mean, you think, assuming the mayorship of New York, with all of the things that he would have to do, he could put his mind to something something far better than this. But this is his first order of business. The article in the midst of it says this: Mamdani, a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, has repeatedly refused to recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state and vowed to arrest Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as a war criminal if he dares set foot in the Big Apple. This is an individual, Mamdani, who doesn't just disagree with Israeli policies. His anti-Israelism is far deeper than that. He doesn't even believe Israel has a right to exist as a nation or a country. And he is the one that actually wants to, saying to Bibi Netanyahu, look, you set foot in New York City, you'll be under arrest for war crimes. I mean, this is radicalism at its height. To sort of build on this theme of anti-Semitism, notice this particular article from CBS News, this one dated January the 2nd, 2026. It says a Jewish group denounces New York City Mayor Mamdani's executive order revoking pro-Israeli policies. Notice what it says here. It says Jewish groups are denouncing New York City Mamdani after he used his first executive order to revoke executive orders enacted by former Mayor Eric Adams, including several pro-Israeli policies. One of the revoked executive orders rolled back the adoption of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism, and another reversed Adams' order that barred the city from businesses and investment decisions that discriminate against Israel. So the first thing you do when you gain office, what does Mamdani do? Delete tweets that are pro-Israeli and protective of the Jewish people. Number two, you reverse an order that says the city is not going to do business with businesses that discriminate against the Jews. And then the third thing you do is you revamp the formal definition of anti-Semitism. I hate to be the type of guy to say, I told you so, but that is always what happens when Islam gets power. It always starts to be discriminatory towards the Saturday people and the Sunday people, as I said a little earlier. The article goes on here and it quotes the Consul General of Israel in New York, who said the actions pose an immediate threat to the safety of the Jewish communities in New York City and could lead to an increase in violent anti-Semitic attacks throughout the city. To my mind, anybody who cares about American culture, American society, Western society should be deeply concerned, because anti-Semitism is not only against the Jews, it's part of an anti-Western, anti-American ideology that New York is now embracing under the leadership of Mamdani. Now, this is very true. As Islam gets the upper hand, it doesn't just stop with persecution of the Jews. It persecutes Christianity as well. And it really will be an attack on Western civilization itself, because the principles of the Quran, as many, many people will tell you, run counter to the principles of the United States Constitution. This article goes on and it quotes another critic of what Mamdani is doing here, saying, quote, Jews, Americans, and anybody should be concerned about this in general, about where New York is going, given the fact that New York represents one of the largest Jewish populations outside of Tel Aviv in Israel. I've wondered for a long time, because the Bible anticipates a worldwide regathering of the Jews from everywhere. I think currently the nation of Israel is now the home of Jews that fled back into their homeland from about 124 countries. And that trend, I think, is going to continue. I think it's going to increase. I think it will accelerate. And that means that the Jews have to go back to the land of Israel, according to Bible prophecy, from the west as well as from the east. And I've often wondered how the Jews could leave a country like the United States, even New York City, where they've done so well financially and prospered economically, etc. And now you're seeing an explanation as to how and why that could happen. You're seeing anti-Semitism via cultural Islam rearing its ugly head right here in the late, great United States of America. Let me put up this graphic. I'm going to show you a video in a second, but let me put up this graphic. This is what Mamdani said in his inaugural address, I guess we could call it that. He said, quote, "We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism," close quote. Individualism, what America is based on, the rights of the individual, the right to pursue your own destiny, pursue your own calling. He calls that, or he identifies that with frigidity. But collectivism, which is basically Marxism, that's all warm and fuzzy, he says. And notice how this particular graphic compares that to what Stalin said. It sounds almost identical to Mamdani. Stalin said the individual is nothing, the collective is everything. So let's watch Mamdani in action as he says this, as he is sworn into office.
We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. If our
So that just rolls right off his tongue. People accept that as normal. We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. I mean, he might as well have said, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, which is a direct statement from none other than Karl Marx. He might as well have said that. It's the identical expression, and he's making it sound like communism or Marxism is just kind of a warm, cuddly, fuzzy thing, and it's there to help all of us. And if you don't accept that, then you're just cold and frigid, as a rugged, individualist, which is what the Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution is predicated upon. There has never been a more important book to read. I don't have a screenshot on this, but the book is entitled The Black Book of Communism. This was written in 1997. It's an academic book created by Harvard University Press. It spans 912 pages, and it documents in an academic manner that in the 20th century alone, communism or Marxism, which is what Mamdani is promoting here, is responsible for the deaths of 94 million people. I mean, what sounds just like a trite, comfortable, sweet statement from Mom Donnie, the blood runs from that ideology. And that ideology killed 94 million people, and most people are unaware of that. They're aware of, rightfully so, of the 6 million Jews that the Nazis killed. Because you know what we did with the Nazis? We put them through the Nuremberg trials, and we exposed, rightfully so, everything they did to the Jews. So most people are aware of that. Very few people are aware of the mass slaughter in the 20th century done by the communists and the Marxists, because there never really was a Nuremberg trial for them. They never really were put on trial. The searchlight of truth was not turned on them the way it was rightfully turned on the wicked, diabolical Nazi regime. And so when a young guy from radical parents, red diaper baby, we might call him, a young Fidel Castro-like figure who's also a jihadist Islamist, starts saying things like this, it's time to be afraid. Obviously, as Christians, we have the courage that God gives us in the midst of situations like this, but we need to take these things very, very seriously, because those that do not learn from history, as the saying goes, are condemned to repeat it. And so the red-green axis, green Islam, red Marxism, is spreading in the United States of America. And as it spreads, as I said before, it will always lead to persecution of two groups of people, the Christians and the Jews, the latter of which is very prophetically significant because Bible prophecy indicates a rise in anti-Semitism in the last days. In fact, notice this graphic here. This is just another example of what is happening all over the United States of America. This is happening in Colorado Springs. It says Islamic Society of Colorado Springs, and this is the new MASGID project, and it gives the address where this is happening in Colorado Springs, and it describes it as a vision for the future. And it's kind of like what they're trying to build in Plano with what they called EPIC. I noticed that they changed the name around a little bit to make it sound nicer, but they're building these cities, and these are literally cities and civilizations within the United States of America with people that have absolutely no intention whatsoever of following the United States Constitution as the supreme law of the land, but rather wanting to follow Sharia law. And these are people, Muslims, that have no intention whatsoever of assimilating into Western culture. They want to build a parallel society alongside Western culture, and eventually the goal is to subvert Western culture. But notice what's going to be in this new package coming to Colorado Springs. And this is not just happening there, it's happening everywhere. There'll be a prayer hall for men and women, classrooms, child play areas, dedicated space for children and the elderly. And look at what it quotes here. It, quote, whoever builds a mosque for Allah, it says there, will build for him. Let me say it again. I think I messed that up. Whoever builds a mosque for Allah, there we go, will build for him a house like it in paradise. And this particular screenshot says the only mosque serving the southern Colorado region, it says. And it's got, QR codes, phone numbers, websites, addresses, places to text. Notice it's got 501c3 tax-exempt status. All donations are tax deductible, and we're literally, folks, financing our own demise. I brought to your attention something like this in a prior prophecy update that was happening in Broken Arrow, I think it was, Oklahoma. I do have some good news on that. The citizens showed up at city council meetings, and for the time being, I think it's more of a temporary victory than a permanent one. The city council backed off, and postponed this project. And that's what the good people of Colorado and Colorado Springs need to do. If you don't want us to become another Europe, you need to start finding out who your representatives are, federal, state, and local. You need to start emailing them. And every time there's a public opportunity to dissent from this type of structure and this type of building, you need to show up and you need to do that. And that's what the good people of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma role modeled for us recently. But this is all, as I said before, very, very prophetically significant, because it's setting the stage for the anti-Semitism of the last days. Let me just read you one sentence from the article I was quoting earlier, and we don't have to put that on the screen, but there we go. There it is on the screen. It says, during his campaign, Mamdani refused to recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state, and he stated he supported efforts to divest from Israel, including not having pension funds invest in Israeli bonds. So this is the new New York City mayor, and if that's the way he thinks and if that's what he believes, and apparently he does, then we can understand why he's taking the tweets down that he's taking and why he's pushing executive orders or creating executive orders, erasing former executive orders. Chalk it all up, folks, to anti-Semitism of the last days. Let's switch topics if we could, and let's go to the second issue that we want to deal with in this prophecy update, and that has to do with the Gog-Magog alignment. And we have a map that we like to use to describe this coming Gog-Magog invasion that's described in Ezekiel 38 and 39. And you notice there we've got two nations, I should say, circled, Rosh or Russia, and Persia or Iran. And we know that when all is said and done, those two nations are going to invade the land of Israel in the last days, accompanied by several other nations that will participate in this invasion. By the way, if you want documentation why we believe Rosh in Ezekiel 38 is Russia, and why Persia mentioned in Ezekiel 38 is Iran, I recommend my book, The Middle East Meltdown. I think we have a screenshot of it, The Coming Islamic Invasion of Israel, and that will give you the documentation as to why those different players and names found in Ezekiel 38 and 39 harmonize with nations today that you can identify in your newspaper. It's an explanation that's important, but it's too voluminous to go into here. So the book there will give you the quick documentation on it. If you're interested, and I just bring that to your attention because there really is documentation on it, I just don't have time to go into it here. So having said all that, since Iran and Russia are end times players, there's been some very interesting developments in the new year related to how that coalition is being put into place. Notice this particular article here from Breitbart. This is a January 2nd, 2026 article, and it talks about a report where Iran is using Venezuela to install drone tech in the Western Hemisphere. Now, this, of course, is very interesting because the United States under Trump just went into Venezuela, captured Maduro, and brought him, I believe, to New York City for purposes of prosecution for his crimes. And that's something that has just transpired recently. And so people have asked me, is that prophetically significant? Initially, I said no, because I don't see Venezuela per se in Bible prophecy. But then all of a sudden I learned that Iran actually was vying for a presence in Venezuela. And Iran, I believe, is mentioned in Bible prophecy. So notice what this particular article says. It says Iran is using Venezuela as a launching point in the Western Hemisphere to embed its drone pipeline closer to U.S. territory. The Center for a Secure Society, SFS, warned this week. On Tuesday, the U.S. Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, sanctioned a group of individuals and entities for their role in the weapons trade between Iran and Venezuela on grounds that it constitutes a threat to U.S. interests in the Western Hemisphere. The SFS emphasized the significance of the measure as it marks the first time that the U.S. government has acknowledged that Iran has been using Venezuela as a proxy to wage war against the United States in this hemisphere. The announcement is not just economic pressure, it signals that the Tehran-Caracas relationship, listen to that, a relationship between Tehran, Iran, Caracas, Venezuela, that relationship now operates as an industrial and logistical architecture with assembly, maintenance, registration, payments, and above all, military capacity installed in the Western Hemisphere, SFS said. The SFS explained that this week's Iranian drone-related announcements are a long-term chapter that began during the rule of the late socialist dictator Hugo Chavez, when Venezuela ceased to be merely an ideological ally of Iran and began to function as the Islamic regime's operational hemispheric platform. Several analyses document that it was under Chavez that Tehran gained regional depth through Caracas, which opened channels, expanded Iran's diplomatic presence, and served as a shepherd for Iran's advance in the Western Hemisphere. The SFS report read, wow. The Bible anticipates Iran would have a presence in the last days. She would become sort of a bellicose, belligerent, aggressive regional power. She would have ambitions to invade the land of Israel in the last days. And boy, are we seeing that prophecy being set up in real time, as now we're discovering that Iran actually has a presence in Venezuela. And that may be the reason, or one of the major reasons, why the Trump administration decided to go in there and take Venezuelan leader Maduro out and bring him to justice. So if you're looking for a connection with Venezuela and Bible prophecy, I would point you in the direction of Iran. And that is prophetically significant because Iran is supposed to become a regional power, if you will, in these last days. Here's another interesting development as far as this Gog-Magog alignment is concerned. This article comes from the Western Journal. This one is dated January the 5th, 2026, and it says, The Trump Effect. One day after the Maduro capture, reports say Iran's supreme leader is preparing to flee the country to Moscow. The reason I find this very interesting is Bible prophecy, based on that map we had up a little earlier with Russia and Iran circled, are supposed to invade Israel in the last days together. Now, if they're going to do that, doesn't that mean there has to be a pre-existing relationship between the two countries? Yes, that is what it means. And you're seeing evidence of it, where now there is in all of our news feeds at the time of this recording an Iranian uprising where the people are sick and tired of the tyranny of the regime, and they're trying to fight against it. Trump is kind of weighing in, saying the United States is going to do something if the violence, continues. And here is the leader of Iran saying, you know what, if this gets out of hand, I got to get out of Dodge. Where are you going to go? Well, he's going to go to Russia. Why would he go to Russia? Because he has a pre-existing relationship with Russia. Exactly what Bible prophecy said would manifest in the last days. Here's a little bit from that article. It says just one day after the daring capture of the Venezuelan strongman Maduro in an early morning raid, the Times quoted intelligence sources which said that the Ayatollah Khamenei, if I'm pronouncing that right, the 86-year-old supreme leader of Iran's theocratic regime, had formulated a backup plan to get out of Dodge, or Tehran in this case, if the protests against his regime, which began in late December, intensified. Trump has taken an active interest in the protests, saying on Truth Social that, quote, if Iran shoots and violently kills peaceful protesters, which is their custom, the United States will come to their rescue. To that, as a patriot, I say hats off to the president. Praise the Lord to the president for going down this road. However, as someone who is a student of Bible prophecy, I'd also have to say that I don't think, however this shakes out, the character of Iran is going to change anytime soon. If this regime is overthrown, maybe there'll be some temporal peace, but ultimately Persia is going to play its role in the end times. Persia, I'm not talking about the Persian people. I'm talking about the government of Persia, is a regime that is an anti-Israeli, anti-Western, anti-American regime. And actually, there's a reason for that. When you study the book of Daniel, chapter 10, around verses 12 and 13, I don't have any screenshots on this, and then you jump down to verses 20 and 21, you'll see that there's actually a fallen power, an angel, over the province of Persia. And as far as I can tell, ever since the days of Daniel, I don't think that fallen power has ever left. Persia was a troublemaker for the nation of Israel in biblical times. It was under the reign of Persia that you have the happenstance for the events of Purim, where there was a plan posed called lots. Lots were taken on the exact day, Haman, of course, being behind this, to exterminate the Jewish people. And, of course, God, as he always does, miraculously overcame through his providential work, through Esther and Mordecai, etc. But Persia, to a very large extent, has typically been a problem to the Jewish people. And it is true that it was under the Persians that the Jews were returned from the Babylonian captivity, but the prophet Ezekiel says, keep your eye on Persia. Persia is going to turn against the Jewish people, and we've seen that happen in our lifetime. 1979, the Shah was deposed and replaced by the Ayatollah, and Persia, or Iran, then became the Islamic Republic of Iran. Prior to the toppling of the Shah, Persia or Iran was an ally of the West and an ally of Israel. In fact, Iran was among the first of the nations to recognize the newborn state of Israel in 1948, something that Muslims don't even recognize today, that Israel is a legitimate state like Mamdani. But Ezekiel 38 And 39 is very clear that Persia will turn. And that happened in 1979 when Iran became an Islamic Shiite theocracy. And now we're learning that Iran has a presence in Venezuela, which helps us understand the events related to Maduro recently. And now we know very well of Iran's relationship to Russia. This is where the supreme leader wants to flee if the freedom fighters gain the upper hand. And maybe they will gain the upper hand, maybe they won't. I don't know. But I know in the long run, Iran is not going anywhere because she is predicted as one of the invaders in the last days of the land of Israel. Speaking of this invasion, notice Ezekiel chapter 38, and notice, if you will, verse 4. As Ezekiel describes this invasion, he says, I will turn you about and put hooks into your jaws. I will bring you out and all your army. Look at this, horses and horsemen, all of them splendidly attired, a great company with buckler and shield, all of them wielding swords, close quote. People say, how can you believe this is a futuristic prophecy? How can you believe in literal interpretation when it anticipates this invasion from Russia coming on horseback? I mean, what a ridiculous interpretation that is. And yet we're living in a time period where that prophecy and its ultimate fulfillment is extremely realizable and credible, as Russia even now is using horses in her conflict in Ukraine. In fact, we have some footage of that, which we're going to go ahead and play for you at this time. Sort of interesting. We've brought to you articles to this effect, but now there's actual footage of these horses. And it's interesting that if you give history enough time, it sort of catches up to the scenario that the Bible anticipates for the end. We were speaking a little earlier of Iran. I want to bring to your attention this article here from the Geller Report. This one dated January 9th, 2026. It says, blood in the streets. Iranian regime guns down protesters as uprising explodes. The regime cuts the internet, phones, and there's a total blackout. This is what, of course, regimes always do. When they're threatened, they turn on their own citizens and they shut off information lines, which citizens need to communicate and organize in their rebellion. And I hope I've got my statistic right on this, but this backlash by the regime against its own citizens who are fighting for freedom and calling on the Trump administration to intervene. The Trump administration has promised in some form or substance to intervene. What has happened is this regime has turned on its own citizens and it's cut off the flow of information. And so here you have an example where Iran is acting like Iran. She's acting like a country or a nation that's demonically energized, which Daniel 10 seems to indicate, that it is. And Iran is acting like Iran because Iran is not going anywhere in the long run. She will be one of the principal invaders of Israel in the end times. So these kinds of things in the headlines, as much as it's tragic, these kinds of things don't surprise me. What I was going to say a little earlier, kind of did a little bit of a rabbit trail there. I said, I hope I have my statistics right. But now, as of the time of this recording, Iran has killed more people in trying to put down this uprising than people that have died in Gaza since October the 7th, 2023. Yet, where are the Greta Thunbergs of the world organizing blockades and boats and boycotts and all of this kind of stuff against and flotillas against the regime of Iran, like she was trying to do, relative to the nation of Israel? Israel goes into Gaza after experiencing its worst event since the Holocaust in terms of massive deaths, October the 7th, 2023. And they try to, and keep in mind that it's the Israelis that gave Gaza back to the so-called Gazans in 2004. And those folks had one and only one election there, and they elected Hamas. And ever since then, they've used it as a beachhead to attack the nation of Israel over and over again through tunnels and rockets and things of that nature, culminating in the events of October the 7th, 2023. So here Israel goes into Gaza trying to rectify that situation, trying to root Hamas out of Gaza, and the world community accuses them of genocide. Well, here we discover that Iran, in recent weeks, has killed more people than those who have died in Gaza, and there's no outcry of genocide against the Iranian regime. Greta Thunberg, with her flotillas and blockades and boycotts, is strangely silent. I mean, this is a massive double standard, is it not? But notice what the Geller report says. It says the Iranian regime has opened fire on anti-regime protesters in Fardis, if I'm pronouncing that right, resulting in dozens of deaths. Now, this is a January 9th article. Many more people have been killed since the time this article was written, within a week or two later. It says the regime has also imposed a nationwide internet blackout, severely restricting communications and hindering the flow of information. You have to destroy the flow of information to destroy any uprising, because the information allows people that are involved in the uprising to organize and communicate with each other. The article goes on and it says, despite the regime's attempts to suppress the uprising, protesters continue to take to the streets, demanding freedom and challenging the oppressive regime. Here's what the article, or here's how it wraps up. You are watching a revolution unfold live while the world's media stays silent. See, hardly anyone, believe it or not, is aggressively talking about this the way they talk about the alleged genocide in Gaza. Legacy media has become nothing more than a propaganda machine, because what news could possibly be bigger than this? Here's what the Shah posted recently. Millions of Iranians demanded their freedom tonight. In response, the regime in Iran has cut all lines of communication. It has shut down the internet. It has cut landlines. It may even attempt to jam satellite signals. I want to thank the leader of the free world, President Trump, for reiterating his promise to hold the regime to account. It is time for others, including European leaders, to follow his lead, break their silence, and act more decisively in support of the people of Iran. I call on them to use all technical, financial, and diplomatic resources available to restore communication to the Iranian people so that their voice and their will can be heard and seen. Do not let the voices of my courageous compatriots be silenced. So what we have here, folks, is a situation where Iran is acting like Iran, the way Bible prophecy indicates, a power dominated by an evil fallen angel, Daniel 10, a power that oppresses its own people, a power that has regional and global aspirations, making its way all the way to developing a relationship with Venezuela, to the point where it threatens us as Americans in the Western Hemisphere, and a power that ultimately will invade the land of Israel in the last days. And by the way, do you know who they're running on their propaganda outlets? Their state-run, state-managed media. Of all people, they're running Tucker Carlson. We're going to play a clip of that in just a second. But on this broadcast, we have criticized over and over again the new woke right, woke Reich, as we call it, the part of the MAGA movement that apparently has moved in more of an anti-Semitic, anti-Israeli direction. And we've highlighted luminaries like Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Stu Peters, etc., as part of that woke right, woke Reich, as some call it. And so we've highlighted the fact that these people are propagandists, and they're bringing on all kinds of propaganda to disparage and delegitimize the nation of Israel in general, and Zionism in particular. And we've made the point that they're obviously being bought off and paid for by all kinds of sources that aren't coming from patriotic Americans. Sources like Qatar, Tucker Carlson buying a house in Qatar, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we've made that accusation. So lo and behold, we discover that Iran, on its propaganda news outlet, is running Tucker Carlson shows and is actually having those shows translated. You can see the translation at the bottom into Farsi, so that the Iranian people can understand and grasp and comprehend this propaganda. It's just unbelievable. So let's go ahead and roll that video at this time if we could.
So the Islamic regime right now is literally broadcasting Tucker Carlson interviews in Persian on their 24-hour news channel. The country is in a state of chaos, and yet for some reason, the Islamic regime is choosing to play Tucker Carlson interviews, because this is like, it's Islamist propaganda. I'm just filming this right now because if I didn't do this, no one would believe. This is literally what's going on in occupied Iran.
So it's stunning. I mean, what does that say about Tucker Carlson and what he's producing in terms of his podcast? If let's see, I believe it's called the IRGC, I believe that stands for the Islamic Royal Guard Corps, and propaganda outlets there in Iran, state-run, state-managed media, are taking Tucker Carlson's content, putting it out there for their public to see, and translating it accordingly. I mean, do we need any more evidence that Tucker Carlson is nothing more than a mouthpiece for Christian Palestinianism, anti-Zionism, anti-Israelism, when those that are adherents to those kind of values, like Islamic countries, are financing Tucker Carlson, allowing him to buy property within their countries, and taking his podcast and running it on their propaganda outlets? I mean, what more evidence do we need that Tucker Carlson is nothing more than an anti-Semitic, anti-Israeli, pro-Islamic propagandist? We don't really need any more evidence at all, do we? So this sort of brings this show to a conclusion. We covered, looking at our review slide in this session, two major issues related to this prophecy update. If we can put up the review slide, that would be great. Anti-Semitism we talked about, And then we also talked about the some developments within the Gog-Magog alignment, how things related to Russia and Iran are not making that alignment more ambiguous. Rather, it's not making it more obscure, but it's crystallizing as we get closer and closer to the end times. That first category, anti-Semitism, we've shown in this episode how that is stretching all over the world, including right here in the late, great United States of America. We have some things to share with you by way of wrap-up. We like to close with Titus chapter 2, verse 13, which says, looking for the blessed hope and the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. There's a silver lining in all of this. Before the wrath of God hits planet Earth, there's a promise in the Bible that God is coming. Jesus is coming to take his own out of the world and take them into the Father's house via the pre-tribulational rapture before the wrath of God hits planet Earth. And we hope in this new year that you're tied into that promise because you've trusted in Jesus as your personal Savior. Once you place your trust in him for your future, the forgiveness of your sins, and the safekeeping of your soul, is the moment you're tied into wonderful promises, not the least of which is this wonderful Titus 2:13 promise. What a great promise to have as we move into this new year, because maybe this year is the year that the rapture will occur. Can I promise that dogmatically? No, I can't, but I can sure hope for it. A few infomercials, if I can share these with you. Go to wherever it is you get your podcasts and enjoy Pastor's Point of View in podcast format. Go to the App Store, download our free app, get our content that way. Andy Woods Ministries. Go to our website, andywoodsministries.org. Catch our content that way. There's a very conspicuous way on the homepage to sign up for our show notes. So these notes that I read from will show up in your inbox virtually every Friday morning. And so I would encourage you to do that. We have the Ask Andy AI device. Go and get this, access to it on our website, also on our app. Type in your Bible question into the question box. It does a real fast search of all of my sermon content, and it will bring up an answer for you in a very readable paragraph or two. And beyond that, it'll take you to the exact spots in my sermons or writings where I mention the idea that you are researching, and then it will give you potential follow-up questions. We've been answering somewhere between 1,200 to 1,500 questions per day. Everybody that gets onto this loves it. It's a great research tool. There's also a way there to set up an account. The account is not to track you or anything like that and start sending you advertisements. It rather allows you different options like cutting and pasting and sharing and saving your questions and things like that. And those are available if you follow the very easy directions to set up an account there at askandy.andywoodsministries.org. You may be thinking about seminary training. I recommend the school that I'm the president of, Schaeffer Theological Seminary. Check that out at schaeffer.edu. And we are now embarking on our 2026 semester. And so this is the time to go out to schaeffer.edu, sign up for a class, get involved in a degree program, and look at all the classes you have to choose from. This is a great way to equip yourself for the ministry that God has for you. While you're there, check out the latest hot off the press issue or edition of our academic journal called Pneumaticos. I think we have a screenshot of that if we can put that up. And also, I want to make you aware of, it's coming up fast. I've been talking about this for a long time, but here it comes. It's little over a month away. Our Sugarland Bible Church ProfCon 2026 to be held at the Marriott City Walk in Sugarland Town Square. This is an all-day Friday and an all-day Saturday event culminating in a Shabbat meal and a banquet speaker Friday evening. And the theme, this is our 5th annual prophecy conference hosted through Sugarland Bible Church, is Last Days Discernment. And look at these speakers: Paul Wilkinson, Russ Miller, Olivier Melnick, Patrick Wood, Alex Newman, myself. I'm going to be doing a special interview with Melissa Hooray of the Lindell Recovery Network. Special music by Olam Worship, culminating Saturday afternoon in a Q&A session, and we would love for you to come to Sugarland and participate in that event. You will love it, I guarantee you. Every year it seems to get better and better. And go to ProfCon. You can see the email address there, or excuse me, the website address, ProfCon, PROPHCON.com to register. Love for you to stick around Sunday too, as our presenters will be speaking at our normal Sunday school times and service times at Sugarland Bible Church on Sunday, February the 22nd. Not long after that is going to be the 2026 Chafer Theological Seminary Pastors Conference on Spiritual Warfare. Dennis Roxer being the keynote speaker, speaking in those evening sessions. There's all the speakers that will be speaking at different times during this event, and there's some information there on how to find out more about it and to register. Not long after that is an all-day Saturday event, March the 14th, 2026, called the Stealing the Mind Bible Conference. I'm one of many speakers speaking in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and that's going to be a great one-day Saturday event. And if you're looking for a conference kind of in the East Coast, I recommend the August 1st conference in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, called the Abraham to Armageddon Prophecy Conference, sponsored by ComingSoonMinistries.org. And there you can see the list of speakers that will be presenting there. And then right after that, trying to lay out the whole year for everybody, is coming the Compass Ministries Bible Lands Cruise, starting September the 24th and going all the way through October the 11th. I think that says the 10th, but they've added a day, the 11th. And by the way, they've added a third bus. So it used to say sold out, but now there's more room. And so I would encourage you to sign up for this. This is a 5-star ship, 9-day cruise, 3 countries, 5 days in Israel, covering a lot of the places that Paul went on his missionary journeys as recorded in the book of Acts, with teaching by myself on the ship and on site, along with Compass host Bill Perkins. What a great way to learn the Bible, by going to the various places where the biblical events unfolded. And last but not least, my book on the Bible and Your Vote has been out for a little while. You want to get that. It'll teach you how to vote biblically, and we'll need that as the midterms are approaching. Well, that's all I have for today on Pastor's Point of View. Happy New Year. God bless you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for praying for us. Thank you for how you've come alongside of us with no big appeals that we make for money, but you've come alongside of us and you have financially provided for this ministry in ways that we could really never even anticipate. And you guys really are not one of the smartest audiences, but you have to be one of the most loyal audiences that any host could have. And I don't say that to you enough. All of your cards and emails that you send, all of your encouraging notes, I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. And just looking forward to a great 2026 together, as we will continue week after week unless the Lord comes and puts an end to it, which we'll all be happy for. as we'll all be caught up in the rapture, but week after week, just bringing you up to speed on the prophetic scenario in these prophecy updates. So with all of that being said, God bless you. We love you. And we will see you next time, Lord willing, right here on Pastor's Point of View. God bless.